Okay, Shalom Uvracha, Shavua Tov, and soon Chodesh Tov. A lot is happening in the world, and a lot is happening in these parshas, so we have to go into a little. We're going to go off a little before we get to the next chapter of the Tikkun HaKlali. We're holding by chapter Ayin Zayin, 77, Malatzeach Al Yedutun Asaf Mizmor, which unfortunately there's not so much. There is, but I wish there was some opening I had to find more information from the Torah. But before going into that, we have to just go into a few things. Number one, it's Erev Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and Rav Nosson writes that Chodesh Shvat, which is the 11th month, counting from Nisan, is a special month for subduing klipot. Even though Shvat, according to the Zohar, is one of the 4 months of Dinim. There's 4 months of Dinim, 4 months of Chesed, 4 months of Rachamim. 4 months of Dinim are Tevet, Shvat, Tammuz, Av. Even though it's one of those months of Dinim, still in the Dinim there is a power to overcome. He says, Rav Nosson, that the number 11, which is the 11th month Shvat, corresponds to the 11 fragrances of the Ketoret. And the Ketoret had a power to machnia, to subdue the klipot. So he said, Rav Nosson, this month also Shvat. The name Shvat is like a shevet, a rod, a staff, to hit and to give makot, to give punishment to the enemies. So Rav Chaim Kramer, he writes a beautiful note in his book Tifar and Water. He writes, it's no wonder that in the month of Shvat, it's something interesting that many things in Breslev started in the month of Shvat. For example, obviously Rav Nosson was born on Tu B'Shvat. Number 2, the first kibbutz of people together, Bar Rabbeinu's kever after he passed away in 1811, was on Erev Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Chodesh Shvat. And number 3, the minhag of lighting an olive oil lamp by Rabbi Nachman's kever, because there's an inyan to light olive oil lamps, but they instituted this thing of lighting it by Rabbeinu's kever. It's spoken about Ba'arichut by Rabbi Nachman. He writes about what it means and the significance. It was started by Rav Nosson, Rav Shimon, Rav Naftali, on, I think Rav Aaron also, or instead of Rav Naftali, Rav Aaron, I don't remember exactly the third one. On Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Rav Nosson opened his printing press in his house in Chodesh Shvat. So it's a month that many breakthroughs, many beginnings, at least in the Breslev movement, took place, and we're hoping in the world also that it should be a breakthrough. Adar is Marbe Besimcha. If you have a din, your mishpat, you go to the. It's good to do things. If you have court cases, then we can do it in Adar. Fine. But in this battle that we're in the middle of, subduing and having a beginning point, Shvat is something very unique. It's also 40 days before Purim. Hey, Dalit, hey, Shvat will be 40 days before Purim. And there's this Kabbalah, this tradition from Nosson, to start already screaming and davening about the Kedusha of Purim and being saved from Haman Amalek 40 days before. And in Breslev, it's very common to say Rav Nosson's beautiful prayer that he wrote on Purim. It's the only one we know of that Rav Nosson instructed his son of Yitzchak, make sure you say this prayer. It sticks out in that he said, that they said there's another place, but this one is the one that's known. But on the prayer of Purim, Rav Nosson made an issue to make sure to say it, and hopefully we'll go into it eventually. Rav Nachman Tutchener, Rav Nosson's disciple, he makes a big noise. He makes a point how the beginning point starts from Purim, and Purim starts already these 40 days beforehand. There's an inyan already, the light of Purim, which is the main key for the final redemption, is with the light of Purim, B'ezrat Hashem. So we're now entering that area with Shvat, with the month of Shvat, B'ezrat Hashem. So we're hoping it's going to be a big time. Also, in this week's Parsha Va'era, which is already going to be in Shvat, is the beginning of the subduing of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. Okay? The submission of being in the exile of Egypt and beginning to have sprouts of salvation starting this week's Parsha Va'era. So with that said, we're going to go into, believe it or not, the 10 Makot as they parallel the Tikkun HaKlali, the 10 types of Nigun. We're going to show the parallel and try to explain how it parallels to see the point, B'ezrat Hashem. So this week's Parsha, we have 7 of the 10 Makot. So we're going to go into the 7, B'ezrat Hashem. First, we need the Arizal. The Arizal says in Shar Psukim that how the 10 makot work is that the spiritual energy causing the makot against the Egyptians and thus being a benefit for the Jews starts from down up. In other words, in the Sefirot, it starts first from Malchut and then going upwards. You would think the opposite. If you're coming down, if you're sending down energy, start from the top Sefirah and then go downwards. He says, no, we want to work up. We want to dafka go from down up. We want to send the light of salvation from Egypt and work upwards, because the goal is to get up. So the result says it makes more sense that we start the makot initially start from the lowest sphere of Malchut. So Dam, he says, corresponds to Malchut, Tzfardea, frogs, Yesod, Kinim, Hod, Arov, Netzach, Dever, Tiferet, Shchin, Gvura, Barad, Chesed. And the next week's Parsha Bo, we have the last three. Those are what's called the mentalities. Keter, Chochma, Bina, but in backwards order. So you have Arbe, Choshech, Makat, Bekot. Arbe is Bina, Choshech is Chochma, and Makat, Bekot is the Keter. Okay? This is how the Arizal explains. This is Kabbalah. We have to now bring it down to practical ramifications. We can see the practical application with the light, in light of the 10 types of Nigun, which also are reflected in the 10th Sefirot, like we went into a lot. And with that, you get an idea of where there was Midah Keneged Midah in the Makkah, and what it was supposed to do, okay? So let's start with Dam. Dam, blood, so the Arizal says, corresponds to Malchut. The Zohar says in Malchut, the type of melody, the Nigun that corresponds to Malchut, is Tefillah. Now, Rabbeinu, in his Tikkun HaKlali, does not follow the order of the Sefirot. By Egypt, this is an insight here. By Egypt, since we were trying to get out of the level 49, minus 49 of Tuma, we were not yet in minus 50, so it was possible to go and cause the exile, the redemption, the exodus, in a step-by-step format from bottom to top. So it makes sense. You go Malchut, Yesod, Hod, fine, we go in order. But now we're in the 50th level of Tuma, and it seems that Rabbeinu, for the Tikkun HaKlali, where people are really, really trapped in minus 50 of the Tuma, and it's getting worse and worse. So for that, Rabbeinu had to play games and do a funny order, not Keseder, of the Tikkun HaKlali, like we saw. He's jumping around. In Michtam LeDavid is Bracha, and then he goes to Keter, Ashrei Keter, right? And then Maskil down all the way to Yesod. Rabbeinu's jumping around because now that we're minus 50, we have to have an up and down scenario. You see, by Rabbi Nachman, Bracha, Ashrei, Maskil, Shem Yitzur, it's up, down, up, down, up, down. It's unbelievable. Up and down, and then up and down. Here, though, by Yetzet Mitzrayim, it was still enough to go in Keseder, from down, Malchut, all the way up to the top of the Sefirot. Okay. So with that said, Dam is Malchut. Malchut, the corresponding Nigun, is Tefillah. Rabbeinu brings down Tefillah, two sources. First of all, the chapter 90, Tefillah Moshe, and the pasuk he brings from Iyov, Hayafel, Tafel Mibli Melach. Can you eat tafel, which is like a bland secondary food, without salt? And like the Zohar says in the Midrash, it's written with a tav, which is prayer. Tafel is written with a tet, but the pasuk writes it with a tav, so it can be understood. Can prayer be consumed and accepted without salt? Is it possible? No, it's not possible. What is prayer without salt? What is prayer with salt? Prayer with salt, the Zohar says, is Tefillah Moshe. That's the prayer of the tzaddik. The tzaddik, Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 23, is the idea of salt. Brit Melach, we went into that already once. That the covenant of salt is the idea of the covenant, is guarding the covenant. That's what the definition of a tzaddik is. So Melach is the covenant. So prayer is exclusively, like the Zohar says, Tefillah Moshe, Tefillah David. Prayer is only for the tzaddikim. So what does that have to do with me? So I can't daven? So by a regular Jew who's not yet Moshe Rabbeinu, not yet David HaMelech, him attaching his prayer to the tzaddikim, it has that power and capacity and caliber. But you have to attach you have to get to the level of attaching your davening to the tzaddik. Fine. Okay. What does this have to do with Dam? Okay? Dam, we see the Nile River, plus all water that was in Egypt, is the source of life. Source of life. Paralleling in Kedusha, Tefillah lekel chayai. Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 9, Tefillah lekel, prayer to kel to Hashem. That's my life. The life of a Jew is davening. When a Jew can't daven, so in a sense he's lifeless. He's dead. If I can't connect to Hashem through my prayers, it's a blockage. So I'm experiencing the ripple effect, the repercussions in my life. Everything's dead. My avodat Hashem is dead. My midot is dead. My simcha is dead. Chas v'shalom, everything is dead because there's no chayut, which comes from the life source, which is the davening. It's gone. It's finished. What's going on, right? So life source is tefillah. The Egyptians, with the bondage, they wanted to take the Jews away from davening. That was the main makkah in Egypt. The Arizal says, and Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Nosson go over this over and over again, that the Dibur was in exile. Meitzar, Mitzrayim is milashon Meitzar Hagaron, the tightness of the throat, that they couldn't daven. It was a miracle that was Vaya'anchu b'nei Yisrael, Vayitzaku, but without words. They were just letting out a krechts, an oi, and that itself was already a miracle that they had the capacity and ability, with all the pressure the Egyptians were doing on them, and Pharaoh shechting their kids, and all the pressure there were, to have an opportunity to cry out. That itself was a miracle. You have to understand. It was a miracle because even that was not supposed to happen according to the itinerary and the plans of the Egyptians. No davening, no connection to Hashem through prayer, no speech, period, nothing. Be quiet and suffer and be enslaved and in bondage until you rot and die, and that's it, you disappear. That was the goal. That was the goal. So no, the Jews let out a krechts. So the idea is that the davening was in galut. So mida keneged mida, and the life source of a Jew is davening. You take away davening from a Jew, there's nothing left. If chas v'shalom, davening is taken away, I had a friend last week, he goes every day to the kotel. Because of the lockdown, so he continued to go to the kotel, and there were guards obviously closing from in front of already Shar Ashpot, already Dung Gate, they already had closed the police. He's an older man, he's wearing a mask. He said, I just want to see the kotel, even from, I don't have to go all the way to the kotel, just let me go in the gate and just to stare at the kotel. Okay? He went in and he did his davening. All of a sudden, a top-notch katzin, commander of the police, comes and he starts screaming at the soldiers, why you let this guy in? He said, he's not harming anybody, there's no one around him, he's wearing a mask, just let him davening. He said, listen, mister, you're not allowed to be here. Okay, I'll let you go to the kotel today. Tomorrow you come, you get a ticket if you come back. Okay? And he says to me, he's crying, he's saying, these people don't realize that our main way to get out of the segir and everything in the lockdown is dafka through davening. You take away our davening, especially the holy sites. You can't say, well, daven at home. You can't compare davening at home to davening at the kotel. I know that there will be much more mileage. But we know that the threat is not 90%. It's not even 50%. It's not even maybe 2% of a threat. Not even 1%. Maybe a point, a decimal, zero something of a threat. There's a physical danger because we see that things were over-exaggerated in this plague. We see that. We're fed up. Other people still don't accept that it was over-exaggerated. But we see, but there's people dying. Nachon, there's people dying. There's always people dying. What ratio? There's less people dying in the world today. It was overdone. I'm sorry that I'm going off the politics. I hate doing this. But just to stress that davening has been inflicted today like it was then in Egypt. That's a big problem. That's a big no-no. That's not supposed to happen here. So going back, the Egyptians, they try to cut off the life source of the Jews. So Hashem hit them mida keneged mida, took away their life source vitality, which is water. Water is the life source for everything. Without water, there's no food. There's no drink, there's no food, there's no life, there's no parnasa, there's no living, there's no survival. The only way the Egyptians can have water is if they gave of their money, damim tarte mashma, they gave of their blood money, their blood. They gave of themselves, their blood, to the Jews, which parallels us attaching ourselves to a tzaddik, which is tefillah leMoshe that we went into. The Egyptians had to attach themselves, their blood money, to the Jews in order to get water. If an Egyptian would give money to a Jew, and the Jew would give him water, it would stay water. You have water to drink, and he would be alive. So the Egyptians, Kidyachol, had to attach themselves to the Yidden in order to have life source. This was mida keneged mida of taking away the Jews from their tefillah lekel chayai, the life source of their life, which is the davening, which tefillah, which is especially through the idea of the tzaddik, Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech, etc. That we see done as malchut tefillah. Tzfardeya. Tzfardea, the Zohar, the Arizal says, is corresponding to Yesod, and the Zohar says that Yesod, that already is the Brit, that's the covenant, that's Yesod, right? That's the foundation. The Zohar says corresponds to a Maskil. We went into this a little, that a Maskil is corresponding to the good of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Yesod is tricky, it's in the middle. Because it's in the middle, it can be turned to the right, which is Maskil, which is an intellectual influence on the covenant, which means proper reproduction, proper usage of the energy of Yesod to bring in Jewish children into the world, which will perpetuate the intellect of Hashem and the maskil, the sechel of God into the world. Or chas v'shalom, mishakel, bereaved, loss of children, wasted seed, chas v'shalom. That's the other side. That's the evil of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's tricky. So Yesod is or maskil or mishakel. So Yesod positively is maskil, when the good has the upper hand of the true knowledge of good and evil, right? That's the idea of Yesod. That's how it's explained in the Kabbalah. We went into this also, that maskil is this positive influence as opposed to the negative influence. And we have to work on elevating the Targum. We went into lesson number 19, elevating Targum, connecting it to the Holy Tongue. So the Holy Tongue has an influence on the Targum, so then, therefore the Yesod is balanced. It's amazing how the Zohar says, and the Kabbalah teaches the Yesod is corresponding to maskil, because this is the balance here through having it maskil. How does the frogs fit in? The frogs did many damages. Number one, they caused major lack of calmness, no tranquility, constant noise, day and night, being bothered, frogs jumping all over, in their mouths. The Midrash says the frogs even castrated, they cut off the reproductive organs of the Egyptians, they castrated them, they made them srisim, okay? This, we can say, is midah keneged midah to what the Egyptians did to the Jews, that by causing them to be overstressed and bothered and confused and crazy and running around and no comedy, and also being bothered from inside and outside, right? And even Pharaoh said, Rak hamavet hazeh, just take away, tasiru et rak hamavet, he said, take away this death. He was so disturbed by the frogs, it was crazy, because it was so disturbing. There's no calamity, there's no peace. So now imagine, what was the midah keneged midah for Tzfardea? One of the midah keneged midah is that this would not let the Jews to be able to reproduce. If now there's no calmness and there's always bother and stress, so the Jews couldn't be together with their wives and have normal relationships and bring children to the world because of the constant stress and pressure that these frogs were bothering them, causing them not be able to have time. Even let's say in Egypt, let's say a woman who was a mikveh night, but the husband was so upside down from the slavery and the bondage, they were wasted. We have the midrash, tachat tapuach oraticha, but that wasn't always the case. The majority of the cases was that the men were wasted. That's why they had to have the midrash tachat tapuach. Why in the field? Because at home they didn't have any menucha. There was no menucha at home. There was no calmness at home. Everything was upside down, being bothered and everything. And yes, on one hand we're taught ken yirbeh ken yifrotz, but that wasn't always. You have to realize in the bondage of Mitzrayim, it wasn't the Jews who were always being fruitful and multiplying. There were times where there were decrees. You have to now send the boys to drown them, and then Pharaoh shechting the boys to bathe in the blood. Those were time periods. Okay, so there were times when the Jews were scared to have reproduction and relations, or they were just wasted and drained because there was no koach. So tzfardeh of the noise, causing lack of concentration, lack of yeshuvadat, everything upside down. You can't even rest. Just imagine, while sleeping, non-stop alarm clock. Alarm clock, it's like trying to sleep with an alarm always on. Some alarms, you get used to them. You can have a noise that's constant, consistent. I can live with it, but when it's too loud and bothering and it's not consistent, there's a frog here, all of a sudden there's another frog here, and then they make Dolby stereo. I have stereo music from the frogs, one here, one there. So there's no yeshuvadat, you couldn't even sleep. And when you can't sleep, you can't function. They were like wasted. That's how the Jews were with the slavery, getting them up in the middle of the night to do crazy work, and the parach, okay? So the tzfardea, midah keneged midah, made the lives of the Egyptians miserable, and that they didn't have the calmness and everything, and even castrated them, midah keneged midah, because they prevented the Jews from tashmish and the mitzvah ona and having the next generation to do the will of Hashem. That's tzvardeya. Kinim, the Arizal teaches, is keneged hod. Okay, hod in the Zohar says it's keneged hoda, giving thanks. What's kinim? Kinim attacked mainly. Lice are found normally where there's hair on the head. Okay, and we know that the Egyptians did not let the Jews bathe, and because they didn't bathe, so they had also a lot of hair, and the hair developed kinim, lice. Okay, what happens with the hair and the kinim is that it's very unpresentable. When you want to be presentable, the halacha says you get a haircut. For example, l'chvod Shabbat, l'chvod Yom Tov, there's a mitzvah, l'histaper. There's a halacha that a person should be presentable in receiving the holiness of Shabbat, Yom Tov, Purim, and it says many times in halacha that a person should go and get a haircut in honor of the Chag, in honor of Shabbat, in honor of festivals, a person's getting married, to be presentable. It says, when Pharaoh sent to pull out Yosef from the boar, Vaygalach, right? Vaychalef simlota, Vaygalach, that they gave him a haircut. They gave him a haircut because you can't be presentable if your hair is all upside down and messed up. So with the hair, there's a lot in presentation. If it's hair on the head, if it's hair on the beard, things have to be presentable. A person comes all like messed up, you can't go see a king like that, you can't see a president, you can't be presentable. And when you can't be presentable, you're full of shame about yourself. And when you're full of shame about yourself, it's very hard for you to give thanks to Hashem. You can't do hoda'ah if you feel bad about yourself. If you feel, I'm so disgusted about myself, such a person who thinks and talks like that, he can't do hoda'ah, he can't give thanks to Hashem. This attitude of hoda'ah was taken away from the Jews because of the lice that they had developed, that they couldn't take showers, they couldn't bathe, they closed all the bathing houses, so they became disgusted. The Egyptians, just imagine, there were Jews walking on the street, the Egyptians would go like this and walk on the other side, go dirty Jews. Dirty Jews was literally the expression in Egypt because they didn't take a shower. They made them dirty, so they were dirty. And then it was used as expression, okay? So this was the damage caused. There was no hoda'ah, there was no hod. It's right, there's hod v'hadar. Hod is a type, hod and hadar are expressions of beauty. Hadarta pnei zaken. Normally hadar refers to like the zakan, the facial hair. But the hod is basically everything else. We get into the hod, that's more the voice. But the voice gains self-confidence if he knows his presentation is okay. If a person feels he doesn't look well, he doesn't have a proper presentation, it'll express itself in the weakness in his voice. He won't be able to feel good about himself. He'll say things very weakly. There'll be no hoda'ah. Hoda'ah, to give thanks, is a statement that requires strength. Thank you, Hashem. What pushes you to say thank you? You feel you were given an accomplishment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Something was given to you. Shelo asani goy. That feeling of, I have something worth, that gives you the strength to do hod, to be able to express yourself. That was taken away from the Jews. Mida keneged mida, that it says, right, the Khartoumim, they were so itching from the lice, they could, I think it's by kinim, am I correct? No, it's not by kinim, it's by shchin, are you sure? Shchin, okay, so we'll skip that. I had a chiddush, if it was that, they're not presentable because they were itching the whole time. Fine, it's in shchin, we'll go into that on shchin, no problem. But here, there's no presentation, they were scratching their heads non-stop, and they felt bad about themselves. They felt bad about it. They felt disgusting that, with lice in the hair. And that was Nimida Keneged Vida. Kinim, Hod, and Hoda'ah. Arov, unbelievable. The Arizal says that Arov, which is the mixed combination of dangerous animals, wild animals, lions, serpents, tigers, bears, okay? Wild apes, chimpanzees, or killers, whatever. All those types of wild animals. Arov is corresponding to Netzach. Netzach, unbelievable. Netzach is a prayer out of salvation. We went into last week. Lamnatseach al tashchet. The nitzuach translates as victory, but it's really a salvation. There's a salvation. That's the nitzachon. The salvation is that the victory. The nitzachon is that there was a salvation. Okay, so that was taken away from the Jews. The Yehush given to them. We're destined to die. You see that, and that when it came time for the Jews to leave Egypt, the majority did not believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. The majority decided to be miwash, full of Yeush, of despair, and they died in Egypt in Choshech, right? There's so many midrashim. The one biggest one is only 1/50th of the Jews left Egypt. The one we have 600,000 men plus the women and children, that's only 1/50th. There are like 50 million Jews in Egypt and only 1 million left. 49 million Jews did not leave. That's a pagam of netzach, nitzuach, that they felt, we're finished, there's no hope. Lack of hope is the opposite of netzach. Nitzuach, netzach, is there's victory, there's hope, there's salvation, okay? What did Arov do? Arov, they were not just cutting off arms and legs of the Egyptians, they were killing them. If they found an Egyptian on the street, the lions would come, and at the same time the Jew, the little children, the midrashim and the comics were showed with the little kids, the cartoons for the children of the Seder Pesach, of the Makot, so that pictures little kids petting the lion, petting the tiger. It's based on a midrash. It was really like that. The little kids, the Jewish kid, the Kiddelech of the Pesach, were able to come and touch the lions and the snakes and everything, and there was no damage at all whatsoever, okay? So this is Midah Keneged Midah on the idea of Netzach, because Netzach, the opposite of Netzach, is death, Yeush, finished. That's what the Hashchata, the damage of the animals, was that they were killing. They were looking after Egyptians to kill. They had to hide themselves, hiding in panic in their houses, not to be killed, not to be damaged, to cut off an arm or a leg, but to actually kill them, chas v'shalom. So this is Arov, corresponding to Netzach. Dever corresponds to Tiferet. Okay, Tiferet. We said we went into a little, but we're going to go into it hopefully more. Tiferet is the idea of Hashem's name complete. Hallel. Hallel is Hallelujah, Yud K. Halleluhu, Vav K. Hashem's name is made complete in Tiferet. Tiferet is complete splendor and glory. Hod is like a personal giving thanks of being a recipient of Hashem for specific items, but Tiferet is where the splendor of Hashem is shown. It's only Hashem now. Yud, K, Vav, K, that's the idea of Tiferet. This corresponds to Dever. Dever was the plague that killed the animals of the Egyptians, who were also their gods. They worshipped the cows, they worshipped the animals, the sheep and everything. That was the idolatry. Okay? So they were punished for this because they took away the Jews from serving Hashem. The Jews couldn't lehodot ulehalel. They couldn't have the opportunity to sing Hallel. The only time they sang Hallel was finally on the night of Pesach. They left the Jews. They left with saying Hallel. We say Hallel to commemorate that Hallel of finally leaving, being under the rule of the Egyptians. That our God is the real God. All their gods were melted and destroyed. Hashem made everything finished on the night of Pesach. On Makat Bechorot, everything just fell down. All the idols and everything. The Midrash said not just the firstborn were killed, but all the idol worship of the Egyptians finished totally finished. So Dever was the killing of the animals, which is the gods of the Egyptians, because they didn't let the Jews to even worship God. Even basic worship of Hashem, that was taken away from the Jews. They didn't even receive the Torah yet even. So the majority of the Jews, except for the Shevet of Levi, they weren't learning Torah so much. They weren't involved so much. So the basic Avodat Hashem, was taken away from them. Nothing. There was no difference between a Jew and a Goy, just his last name and his language and the Malbush. That's it. 3 things they kept. And besides that, there's no Jewish identity. That was done purposely by the Egyptians. Okay? So Keneged Zeh, their gods were taken off. You have nothing either. You take away the Jews from worship to God, to have their connection to God, as if there's no God, chas v'shalom. So you get punished that your gods are wiped out. Your gods are finished. That's Saif Dever. Shchin, the Arizal says, is Keneged Gvura. Shchin are the boils on the skin, making a person feel non-stop discomfort, okay? In a sense, Shchin and Kinim are both connected in a sense, because they both deal with the body here. Shchin, Gvura, is really, really incessant scratching and pain. You can imagine it was like them doing themselves. They can't just leave the boils alone. They had to scratch them and they were bleeding. Frogs are from the outside bothering me. That's a tzfardea. Kinim, they're bothering my presentation. They're making me feel lack of confidence. Shchin is mamash. You can imagine. Rabbi Nachman says the biggest suffering of a person is that if you want to experience what is a real self-mortification, is that when you have a major itch and you don't scratch it. When you don't scratch the itch, Rabbi Nachman says this is like the biggest of all the self-mortification, of rolling in snow, being in a cold mikveh, doing all types of crazy things. The worst one Rabbi Nachman said, he pointed out, is when you have an itch and you don't scratch it. You don't move and you want to scratch it and you can't. That is like mamash. Like the time is like, when is it going to finish? When is it going to be over? They say you can't scratch yourself. You have something, you can't scratch it for half an hour. And it's itching you, and you're waiting for it's taking an hour. The half an hour seems like 10 years because of the pain. In that sense, it's gvura. That again, that they made the Jews, not just, you see, kinim is the self-confidence, it's the itching of the hair, and I'm not presentable because of that. But the shchin is mamash gvura. It's mamash the idea of gvura. We said, again, it seems Rabbi Nachman's following the opinion of the Zohar and Parshat Pinchas, that mizmor corresponds to gvura, because he says, the Zohar says elsewhere, that mizmor is chesed. But here, it makes sense that gvura corresponds to mizmor, because in it you have raz and mum. The Jews weren't able to sing, were able to be happy. There was no basic simcha. The opposite of simcha is atzvut. Atzvut is represented by gvura, by the way. That's gvura. Because it says, Rabbi Nachman says that a person who's sad, Hashem hates that person. There's hatred. When a person falls into atzvut, so Hashem is upset at that person because you have what to be happy about, and you choose out of your gaiva, no, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, so I'm upset now, I got God, and I become depressed. So that's gvura, God forbid, from the person. He deserves as a punishment gvura. Shchin let people not even, they couldn't even express themselves. So the Egyptians were punished also with the shchin. This is what we said, by the Khartoumim. They couldn't stand in front of power when it came to this makkah. They were so in pain. It was like non-stop pain now. It's scratching and scratching and scratching, and it's this incessant of pain. There's one thing to be distracted, like the tzfardia, but it's another thing when there's non-stop pain driving a person crazy, and it doesn't end. This is the makkah of the pain. You want to say it's gvura. It's coming from gvura, and here mizmor is the opposite of that. Lezamer means to cut, right? To cut from the suffering. But here there was opposite. There's more to develop on that, but that's what I have for now. Okay. Barad, the final one, barad hail, is chesed, number one. The barad had fire and water, but it had water being the upper hand. Because how the barad came down, how the hail came down is how hail normally comes down. Like rain, water comes down from the sky. But it came with such a downpour to break all the person's parnasa, all the person's property. He had anything outside, livestock, crops, anything, everything was smashed and broken. That's how the parsha finishes, right? That everything was broken. All the crops that were ready to be eaten, finished. Where a person's parnasa is knocked out totally. The Egyptians also, they made the Jews into slaves, which meant they had no parnasa also. They had barely food to eat. This is the makkah, if you want to say, of the parnasa. Chesed is abundance, is blessing. Hail, which represents rain, rain is a source of blessing. Rain is an idea of blessing, of bracha, parnasa, coming down. That's the idea of rain. But here it came down as barad. We're going to send you down, but it's going to destroy everything. Too much chesed, we're going to make it that it overpowers everything and makes everything finished. And that's the idea of nigun. Nigun corresponds to chesed, and nigun is the noi, the pleasantness of the gan. The gan, idea of a gan, a garden, is where you grow fruits, vegetables. That's the idea of parnasa, is the idea of the gan. The pleasantness of the gan, which is the idea of parnasa, that was knocked off from the Jews. They couldn't sing a nigun. Nigun comes when a person has money, has what to stand on his feet. So he has a type of a joy that he can sing this type of nigun, melody called nigun, because of Hashem's chesed to him. So he's able to express with the abundance what a normal person without pressure, without poverty can do. When that's taken away, there's no nigun here. So that's what the Egyptians do to the Jews, and now they were punished with barad, which is the onslaught coming from chesed. It came down the form out of bracha, but it was really mixed with fire, and it destroyed and broke all their parnas. Anything they had outdoors was just destroyed totally, to make them feel that emptiness also. Okay? So this is what we have in this week's parasha. They'll put that on the side. We now have to go to chapter 77. We still have time, of course. Yeah, we're okay. So it's like this. There is what to say here, Bezat Hashem. Let's see how we can develop it. Lamatzeach al yidutun la'asaf mizmor. This chapter has the secret of nigun. Because the pasuk, ezkera neginati balayla, im levavi asicha vechapes ruchi, which, by the way, this pasuk is like the main theme of the Kutei Moran lesson 54. I like always jumping around lessons, but here, Rabbi Nachman talks about it a lot, lesson 54, Nun Dalet, about this pasuk. Because he goes into the power of melody hinted in this pasuk and what nigun does. Ezker, but we explained it like this in the context. Ezkera neginati balayla, how Rabbi Nachman explains it. I will remember the nigun when it's night. When, God forbid, I'm under the influence of Lamed Yud Tav, of Pagama Brit. I'm now, God forbid, under her domain. So what can I do? I can remember, right? Zikaron, you don't remember something bad. You don't remember Gvura, so it makes sense. You remember Chesed. Zacharti lach Chesed ne'orayv. When you remember good times, you remember times of Chesed. So Nigun is associated with Chesed. Ezkera neginati. I remember the Nigun of the goodness that I had in my life, the bounty that Hashem was kind to me and good things happening. So when a person is dark, Nigun subdues that darkness. He says, Ezkera naginati. If I just make mention to remember Nigun when I'm in the Laila, so we said afterwards, what's the next part of the verse? Im levavi asicha. Remembering the goodness puts me back into perspective. What am I doing with my life? What's happening with me? How can I waste my life? A person begins Im levavi asicha. A person begins to do hitbodedut. When a person is too preoccupied, he can't do real hitbodedut. You have to have a person to feel the severity, the reality of a situation in order to cry out to Hashem. The reason why people can't cry out to Hashem is because they're so distracted of remembering how severe the situation is and how much they have to do davening right now. But when they're helped to be reminded of the severity of the situation, then the Jew can express himself out. So Ezkera naginati balayla, the nigun activates the remembrance of Chesed, that Hashem was with me. Where am I? And then as a result, Im levavi asicha, where is that? I'm looking for it now. So now I start talking with my heart in hitbodedut. And then, v'chapes ruchi, like we said, the commentaries explain, I can find the answer to my questions, the ruach, my ruach, I can find it in the Torah. The Torah begins to answer back. That's nigun, the noi, the pleasant of the gan. The gan are the 53 parshiot of the Torah. That's the beauty of the gan, of the entire Torah, that comes out of nigun. The nigun, chesed, activates the Torah to answer a person with his hitbodedut. So, ezkar naginati balayla, number one, but it starts by activating the nigun, okay? So the commentaries say, Asaf, who wrote this chapter, there's an opinion, he's or one of the Leviim, or he's actually one of the sons of Korach. There's, I think, Avi Asaf. His name is Avi Asaf, I think that's the full name.
This week's Parsha.
This week's Parsha, huh? Unbelievable. Fits in nicely. So Asaf, the commentaries say, why is he called Asaf? Like what Rabbi Nachman says in Lesson 54, that nigun, what is nigun? It's plucking the good from the bad. When you want to compose a nigun, you have to pluck and pick on and hit on the right tune, the right chords, in order to make a presentable, beautiful melody. You start boom, boom, boom. You don't put it like a child playing on the piano. You have to be precise on picking the good nigun, the good tune, and picking it from the bad tune. So Asaf, Rabbi Nachman says there, it's to gather in the good melodies, and this is how nigunim are caused, and Rabbi Nachman there connects it to Azamra. Finding the good points comes out by finding the good points. You don't find good points by doing, borer. On Shabbat, borer, where's borer? You pluck the bad from the good. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. Because Shabbat is a very happy day. Borer is that you have, the opposite of borer is you pick out the good from the bad, that's not borer. When you try to pick out the bad from the good, that's a problem. Okay? Also in life, it's a proper person, I'm this, I'm that. It doesn't work to find the good by picking out the bad points. A person tries to think, okay, this is wrong and that's wrong, and then tries to see what's left as being good. He'll never get to the good because he gets so depressed from all the bad that he's plucked out, he can't be good. So what's needed, Rabbi Nachman says, you have to look for the good. You have to pluck out the good. You pluck out the good, and then afterwards, but it's not so well. The fact that I have the yeah, but it's not so well happening after I picked out the good, that's already okay, because I picked out the good first. Even afterwards I have a yeah, but it's not 100% well, that's already batel nevutal, because I already picked out the good first, so that's stronger than the yeah, but. The yeah, but doesn't have an influence, I picked out the good, so I'm focusing on the good. It's like someone takes picks like a big bundle of grapes. Wow, look what I found. And they look closely, yeah, but this is rotten, and it's like dried up and everything. But the person who picked out the grapes, he's happy. I have the bunch of grapes here, I don't care. It looks nice, it looks beautiful. You look closely, yeah, I examined the grapes, there's something. But the person who picked out the grapes is very happy about what he picked out. That's the idea of nigun. This whole chapter, Asaf is talking about the Jews in exile. We went into this a long, long time ago. The chapter 77 is, we're in Galut, and I'm about to give up. It's so dark, when is it going to end? We're in Galut so long, so where's the light? So Nigun is coming to give life to a person who is in such choshech. Ez ger naginati balayla, on the pshat, is I'm in the layla of the exile. So what do? What do I have with me to survive? So Asaf is saying you have to find the Nigun. Okay? So Lamatzeach al Yedutun, the Rashi brings down, what is Yedutun? Ala dinim v'adatot. Lamatzeach, a song called Lamatzeach, on regarding the judgments and persecutions, the dinim, the suffering, and all the judgments and persecutions given to the Jews. La Asaf Mizmor. Asaf was able to collect good and make a melody out of the Yedutun, out of the dinim v'datot, the judgments and the difficulties. He was able to gather in the Asaf, that's his name, Asaf, was able to gather in good points for survival and to hold on, even in the exile, even in the suffering and the persecution of the dinim v'datot, which is Yedutun. Asaf was able to make this mizmor. Okay? So now, if you take the beginning of the Tikkun HaKlali until the end, and you try to get halfway into it, okay? So I did the calculation, okay? I have in this edition of the Tikkun HaKlali, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages. Half is 3.5. So I do 1 page, 2, 3, 1 second. I did it right? No, it's 4.5. I'm sorry, right, 4.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5. I get to halfway into chapter 77 already. 77 is the midpoint of Rabbi Nachman's Tikkun HaKlali. Around middle point, the Chernorav points out, you have 2 of Hashem's names. Elokim ba'kodesh darkecha, Mikel gadol kelokim. He says, the Rav of Cheren, the Rav Nachman Goldstein, the Prabhupada Chochmah, that you have in this chapter the secret of, in other words, hidden in this chapter, together, a verse which has 2 of Hashem's names, Kel Elokim, which Rabbi Nachman pointed out in lesson 205, that when you expand them, Aleph Lamed, Hey, Yud Mem, they add up to 485, which is the Gematria of Tehillim, and it's these 2 names which correspond to Chesed and Gvura. Chesed is Kel, Elokim, Lordship is Gvura. These 2 names are what submit the Klippa and extract the holy spark of any wasted seed, because their makeup is made of heat and cold, liquidy and fire. Okay, that's the makeup of the seed of man, right? So these 2 names, Rabbi Nachman says, they're the holy correspondence of the damage caused of wasted seed to bring them back out. It's hinted to Dafka in this chapter because of the 10 Sefirot, the 2 Sefirot which are mostly involved in extraction, in now fighting the battle, is Chesed and Gvura. These are the 2 ones. Chesed has also a part in Gvura, because you see you have Kel and Elokim. In Elokim you also have Aleph Lamed. You have Aleph Lamed, and you have another time Aleph Lamed to show Chesed's presence even in the Gevurah. So in this chapter already, which is corresponding to Nigun, you already have the beginning, if you want to say, of we're already halfway of the Tikkun HaKlali. You passed 5 chapters, fine. This is already the 6th chapter. Inside of it already, you have activated Kel and also Elokim to show that already it's beginning the rectification. You've gone halfway already, so half is done already, and now the Kel has been activated. Now what's left is the Elokim, the other 5 chapters, fine. So
here's the place to be Machavim, the scale of the king.
So now, okay, you see in Breslov, Maharosh, Rav Shik, he always said, you should have in mind, in the second verse here, Koli El Elokim. People had a very big bikoret on what he said, because El is of a segol, which means my voice is to Elokim, and he said to have in mind a holy name, but it's not a holy name, okay? And here it's amazing how the Cherner of Parpar Choma brings out this pasuk, I have Kel Elokim. Now, we know, and the Onik Shabbat, Rabbi Freimel, he says clearly that Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 205, it's understood from there. He says you have to have this in mind when saying the Tehillim. You have to have in mind that El Elokim, when expanded, Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem is Gematria 485, which is the Gematria of her name, Lamed Yud Tav. She's 480, plus 5, that's 485. So you have to have this in mind when saying it. When you say them. So the Rav Freimel says, this you have in mind before saying the entire Tikkun HaKlali. Rav Shiki said, say it in this chapter. And that means until then, no, I didn't have this in mind. When I get to this chapter, I have it in mind. Because of this big polemic if what he said is accurate. However, the Cherner Rav does bring down El Elokim as appearing both in this chapter, because this is the power of Nigud. Okay? So one more thing. Yedutun. What's the Gematria of Yedutun? Yud, 10. Dalit, 4. Vav, 6. Tav, 400. 6. Vav, Nun, 50. 482. Unbelievable. Am I right? 482? Yeah, 482 is Yedutun. Okay? And it's Al Yedutun. It's a remez. Her name, she's 480. Rabbi Nachman says you have to add another 5 in order to get to Tehillim. Tehillim is 485. She, Lamed Yud Tav, that's 30 plus 10 plus 30 plus 10 plus 400.
476.
1 second. How'd you get 4? What, Yedutun? With both vowels? One more time, please. 10, 14 plus 6. 14 plus 6, that's 20. 420. 426. You're right. 450. 400 and
76.
Oh yeah. So I was off. Okay.
What we see is,
Huh?
you can have the letters.
No, but what? 476. How many letters? 77, 78, 79, 80, 81. How many letters is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The letters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, but it's more.
481.
481. Okay, so it's fitting. That's it. Okay, so it's 481. She's Lamed Yud Tav. Al Yedutun. Al means on. In other words, going on through Yedutun, we counter her, but it's Yedutun again with the 6 letters. I thought it was exactly Yedutun. I'm sorry about that. But here is hinted the tikkun of already the beginning. The nigun. See, Rabbi Nachman, we said this once. He called them Asare Mine Negina. It also appears in the Zohar, Asare Mine Zimra. And then there's the Shir Pashut Kafur Mishulash Meruba. But he calls the 10 types of melodies Nigun, Negina. Because this is the Ikar, this is the main point of extraction from the Klipot, of now bringing from the side of Tuma to Kedusha. It's the one who's really Movil, the one who's going to be doing it, is Nigun, believe it or not. Nigun is starting the procedure. Nigun needs all the 10 times. You need Asher, Bracha, Maskeh, Shir, Nitzuach, right? It needs all of them, and especially Mizmor, which is going to be for Elokim. But the point where it begins the extraction of the Tikkun, it starts in this chapter. That's why it's hinted, the Chandra points out, Kel and Elokim is pointed out, and the idea of Nigun is beautiful. It's looking for the good. It's remembering, it's Chesed, corresponds to Chesed. Zacharti la Chesed Noraich, it's the idea of to remember Chesed. I'm trapped in darkness, what can I do? Think of something positive, think of something good. That way you don't feel the difficulty of what you're going through now. You disappear. You disappear in time. And that way you're not feeling the pain of what you're going through. You're connecting to a Chesed. So this idea of Nigun, as it fits in, the whole chapter is that, because the chapter is on exile. The person's in exile. Asaf is giving us the chizuk, how to hold on in exile. So this is the theme of this chapter. And B'ezrat Hashem, I think we're covering ground, and this is where we're holding fine. So Nigun, Chesed, and this chapter is very propitious for activating the power of Nigun B'ezrat Hashem. All right. Okay.